In the interview exam, you will have to calculate the proportion of MPV that falls below zero in all of your replications. So here, what I did is I generated 100. In this case, I didn't actually like calculate an NPV doing a Monte Carlo simulation. I just generated random numbers, right? But how could I calculate how many of these numbers are below zero? What we can use is the count if function in Excel. So first, let's start with the count function. The count function in Excel, if you select like some cells. So you type equal count, open your parenthesis, and then you can just put in the value. So if you just select a certain number of cells, it's going to tell you, right, how many how many values do you have in those cells. So we'll just count how many values. Can be useful to calculate um, if you have a sample, right, and you don't know what's the sample size, the sample is on Excel, then you can calculate what the sample size is easily. It can be useful too for me as a prof. Sometimes when I want to verify, right, do I have enough students that did something? The count function can be useful. So I can just type count, open parenthesis. I select the cell here. I'm going to just Control Shift down arrow to select everything that was below, and I should have 100 replication, so it should give me 100 here. There are 100 values in all of the cells that I selected. Okay, if one of these cell was nothing, was a zero, then see it now only has 99 values. Okay, um, and all these numbers are randomly generated, so they will change every time I do something. The other function, and the one that is more useful, is the count if function. The count if function is the same thing as the count function, but it based it on a if condition or a criteria, right? What is the criteria? So for example, I want to count in here in all these NPVs. I want to count, so I'm just going to select my range. So I go to the first cell again, Control Shift down arrow, okay? Then I'll put a parenthesis, not a parenthesis, a comma, and I get to the criteria. Just have to scroll back up. And here in the criteria, I can put what my criteria is. In the interview exam, we want to calculate what's the proportion of observations that are below zero. So I could put open parenthesis, and my criteria is it is below zero. The value in the cell has to be smaller, right? What is in the cell has to be smaller than zero. You need to put the quotation mark before and after your criteria, okay? And then you can close the parenthesis. And if you do that, it will count how many of these observations are below zero. Unfortunately, there is none right now. See, and as I reselect these numbers, then there are some of these observations here. We can see one at 871 negative. So in this case, there are three that are negative. If I go through, I should see three that are negative. Okay. Um, so you can play with this function, right? Make sure that it works well. But as I said, in the interview exam, you will want to count the proportion. So the proportion, right, of observation that are below zero is how many are below zero, and then I just divide that by the total number of observation um, that I've drawn. Here, by the way, we know there's 100 replication. I did it before. We wouldn't have to use the count formula. Also, we could just do all of this. It's not a hard calculation, so we could have done all of this in one step without doing multiple steps, right? I could have used count if. So I want to count in this range here. I'll just scroll back up, and I want to count in this range if it's smaller than zero. And then I could have just closed the parenthesis and divided by 100. So it would have given me that number here much faster. These two should be percentage. Um, so these two should be percentage. And then these two cell will always give me the same value here. I just did it slightly differently, right? One I did in more um, steps and one I did in less steps. Apparently, the numbers that I decided to take don't often generate a negative number. But anyway, every once in a while here we get some negative number. We have one negative number out of 100 observations. So that's 1% of our observation. 1% of our MPVs are below zero. So this project would probably be a good project, right? And that's it for this function, which is the countif function.